While it may be cold outside, things are getting toasty warm at Global Voice Broadcasting. Heat up your winter nights with the hottest topics, the hottest celebrities, and today's best music. It's why Global Voice Broadcasting is becoming your 24/7 home for the music and talk you want right now. Discover your favorite shows and music anytime at globalvoicebroadcasting.com.
I highly recommend Ms. Hicks. Her books, her CDs are encouraging.
I bought her book, A Hill to Climb. She's a very inspirational speaker.
And I look forward to one day being able to work with her.
Your power lies within you. Let it loose.
Aspiration, inspiration, motivation, edification, determination. These are the keys of life success brought to you by none other than award-winning author, motivational lecturer, business consultant, and much more as she gets you aimed to your purpose. And now, ladies and gentlemen, young and elder, from Hollywood to the entire world, here is your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Louise Hicks, along with her co-host, yours truly, Kenan Wesley Mason.
Hello, world. How is everybody? Once again, we are back with you with a new show today, and I am your host, Louise Hicks of Aim to Purpose, the radio show.
And I am your co-host, Kenan Mason, and I want to say again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone around the world listening and watching Aim to Purpose, the radio show, bringing you the best in internet radio. The number to call in, as always, from anywhere around the world, 1-323-522-5482. From anywhere around the world, 1-323-522-5482. As we are bringing you another special guest as we continue to acknowledge Black History Month. Our special guest today will be Kara L. Poole, and today's edition is the importance of learning Black history from the Black perspective.
And we have a great show for you today, and this is our third week into Black History Month, and we're looking forward to speaking with our special guest. And we usually share a little bit about what our weekend was like, and I had a great weekend. I didn't do a whole lot this weekend, but it was awesome, and I'm looking forward to next week and the following week as we continue on in this month of Black History. Did you do anything exciting, Ken?
Yeah, I spent, it's always exciting when I get to spend extra time with my daughter. So it's, every day is an experience with her, as you know.
Yes, it is. And my granddaughter, the one and only. And we know yesterday was Valentine's Day. I was very excited with my daughter giving me a beautiful African violet plant and giving me some chocolate candy, in which I like chocolate candy, but it must have nuts. If it doesn't have nuts in it, I'm not too thrilled. But right. We're going to jump right into the show today because we have a lot to talk about. So what we're going to do is just jump into our show.
Okay. Oh, so we're going to go right into it?
Yes,
okay.
We're going to go right into our show today. We'll take a commercial break a little bit later.
Okay, cool. Kara L. Poole is the owner of KLP Productions and the creator and producer of The Great Griot. Kara's journey began with her acting career during her mid-20s, where she obtained roles in many independent films, hosted a traveling television show, as well as acted in several regional and national commercials. Her love for acting soon led her to television production. It was behind the scenes that she learned about the influence of media. She worked over 3 years for a CW affiliate in producing original programming and managing a production team before branching off to establish her own video production company. Throughout Kara's acting and video production career, few knew that she was an avid reader, having a thirst for learning history, a spark that was lit through the influence of her high school Black history teacher that would soon become a flame that was developed by phenomenal Black history professors. During her undergrad studies at North Carolina A&T State University, Kara found it her obligation to study Black history outside of what is typically given in the classrooms. That's what I want to talk about. It influences, it wasn't long before she decided to marry her love for acting, hosting, video production, and her passion of reading and learning about Black history to create The Great Griot. Being the creator and producer of The Great Griot, a Black history web channel, Miss Poole focused on telling the undiluted history of our people and biographies of our revolutionary leaders who are not commonly discussed, along with critical key events as they actually occurred that produce constructive results for Black people in the diaspora, which are not taught in school. Which, with each video created, she hopes to visually inspire the masses of Black people globally on the persistence of our ancestors possessed by the spirit of liberation. So let's welcome to Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Miss Kara L. Poole.
Hello, Kara. And thank you so much for joining us. We are delighted to have you here. You know, we love having our in-house studio guests. We have guests that Skype in from all over the world, but when we have them in the studio, we love it. So we are glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank both of you. It's an honor to be on the show today.
Thank you. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to talk about the importance of learning Black history from the Black perspective. And this being Black History Month, what better time than to talk about Black perspective and the history of Black people. And if you hadn't noticed, my son and I are both Black, so hey, it's a good thing to talk about this, huh?
So.
It's a good thing to talk about.
So, what an illustrious bio, and you've done a lot of things. We love some of the things you've done, and I noticed Ken honed in on the fact that this classroom, we want to talk about that, and that was one of the things I had really put an asterisk by too, because I think we need to really talk a lot about that. But first of all, what really got you into researching and finding out why we are so limited in what we know about our own history?
Well, like I said, I always had a thirst for knowledge about Black people. But, you know, myself, like so many others out there, when you go through school and you learn about Black history, even when you begin to read some of the history on your own, it still comes from a very Eurocentric worldview.
Yep.
So, you know, what we are taught about, even with some of our particular people, it's so much that we don't learn about. So just as my mind began to open up to some of this, you begin to see that this information that's missing with us is so necessary in Black people's struggle in America or throughout the diaspora, any colonized land. It's so necessary. So I with the Great Grio, I just said, you know what, let me use my skills, my knowledge, and my time. Don't have a lot of money to put into it. I said, but I can start with time and my skills that I already have, and let's marry that thing together and make a show. Let's just put it out there. Let that be the give back.
And that's so important what you just said, because a lot of people are walking around saying, oh, I don't have the money to do this. I don't have the money to do that.
Right.
Or the time either.
Or the time.
Right.
And you have to make time. I mean, I've been retired for 10 years, and I know anybody that has been watching this show know that I retired 10 years ago on March 4th, coming up at 55. And here I am embarking upon 65. And you
absolutely beautiful at 65.
Thank you. But you make time for things that are important and significant in your life. And you said another key word, skills.
Right.
We are such a brilliant, great people, and we want to show how great you are, because we're going to show a video clip about you and what you're talking about, the Griot, what it really is. It tells about this in this video clip. So let's show that quickly.
Okay.
Hey you, do you know your history? Do you know your culture? We have a beautiful history full of triumph, determination, perseverance, love, hope, faith, family, and community. And as your great griot, I want to share that history with you. A griot? It's pronounced Grio, or in English, a griot. It's a West African term for the person who keeps up with the genealogy, the history, the culture, shares the stories of the people, and so much more. Whew. We're like a walking library, full of knowledge and ready to share. I'm going to take you into the history and the culture of your people from all over the world. A griot's purpose is to serve the people. That's right. As the great griot, I am here to serve you. Because the more you know, the more you grow. Wait, that's not my quote. Oh well, it's the truth. Oh, we gonna learn some history today. Yeah. The great Grio. Oh, we gonna learn some history today. Oops. I dropped it for real. Ooh, I love my books. I just sold some recently at the yard sale. Only because I want other people to know how what I read. Stop it! Stop it! Oh my gosh!
See, we have so much history, she can't even hold, Miss Kara can't even hold the books. I mean, and she only has a few of the books in her hand, and it's so heavy she can't hold it. And like she said, the more you know, the more you grow. So we gonna learn some history here today. Yes, we are.
Dropping the books and everything. That's how much knowledge is in the air.
I mean, and she got it. She's packed. I'm telling you, this young lady is power-packed with our history, and our history did not start with slavery. Now, did it, Miss Kara? Where did it start?
Absolutely not. There's so much death in African pre-colonial history, you know, where we all came from. So it did not start with slavery, even though in my videos you'll see a lot of post-slavery, just because I would love for black people to really know where we are, without a question of a doubt, to know where we are. But no, our history did not start with slavery.
That's right, it didn't. We were kings and queens prior to that on the richest continent on the planet.
Yeah, right. We had dynasties.
Yes.
Right, we had empires with our own sovereignty, and you know, that's my mission, is to understand even some of those empires better. But understanding where we came from to what we're under now, and understanding what some of our ancestors fought for, it's an eye-opener. It's an eye-opener.
It really is an eye-opener. Now, how did Black History Month get started?
It got started with Carter G. Woodson vying for a week, Black History Week. And, you know, he's written so many books. As a matter of fact, if anybody go to the YouTube channel, The Great Grio, we actually have a video on Carter G. Woodson explaining who he was. He was one of our great scholars who put a lot of work and time into researching, you know, post-slavery here and during slavery. There was a lot of stripping black people of their culture, their knowledge of everything, and absolutely putting our history into the darkness. You know, even saying we came from the dark continent and flipping the African history around, and so we were very limited on what we knew, you know, and Carter G. Woodson is one of the great scholars who decided to go back and to begin to document this stuff and begin to, you know, tell the truth about our history and who we were and what we came from, and then, you know, show us today the importance of a lot of stuff that we face in this world with our education, with educating our civilization. You know, so he opted for Black History Week, which eventually turned into Black History Month. And he didn't vie for that for us to stop there in February, but for us to take a pause and to recognize our history, who we are, But he did it year round, and he devoted his life to it. So I say mimic him, and we need to do that beyond February.
That's right. We really do. It's okay to take the month of February. That many of us didn't know that Carter G. Woodson was the person that was the reason February was launched as Black History Month.
Right.
However, our history should be an everyday event with our children, particularly because they are our future. And why is it so important, Kara, that we educate our children on our history?
First of all, to me, it's important because in a society that we're in right now, sometimes we can look around and see the realities for the collective of our race. And what we're taught in schools oftentimes distorts our perception. And I like to say it keeps us walking around disoriented because your perceptions of what you know of your history or American history and how things actually happened and how it affected your race does not match when you go and see the realities of your race.
Right.
And my big thing with the Great Griot is how can we, go back and look at history from a Black perspective to clear up that vision. You ever go to the eye doctor and you're looking through the holes, the oculars, and they're trying to clear them up so that you can see the letter clearly? I feel like if we don't know history from a Black perspective, then you can't look at your realities how you should look at your realities and totally understand it. And if you don't understand your reality, then how do you change your reality?
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, because all that we've ever seen or all that we've ever known is, like what you said, what we were taught.
Right.
That's all I ever knew.
Right.
All we ever saw about Martin Luther King was that he marched on Washington. He gave that famous "I Have a Dream" speech.
Right.
And he was killed at the Lorraine Motel.
Right.
And that's it.
And we don't know about Martin Luther King that Coretta Scott King spent more than double their marriage time in fighting this case in court, and came out in 1999 actually showing that the U.S. government was a part of the conspiracy that created his death. But what they teach us is what he spoke about 6 years earlier, than his death.
Say that again, because a lot of people don't know how involved and how corrupt our government is.
Right,
correct. And to this day, we're so indoctrinated, we're so brainwashed, we're so bamboozled. So say that again about the government.
Well, Coretta Scott King, and if anybody want to look it up and get more information, it's a book out by William Pepper.
Oh, it's there.
Two books by William Pepper, and I don't recall the title of it, but Coretta Scott King and the King family, they fought very hard to show that the U.S. government, what she knew was that the U.S. government was involved with the conspiracy to kill King. Yeah. And they won the court case. And what was so disheartening is, I think she won the court case, the civil case, for $100, which shows you that she was not out to get money.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
She was out to show
the truth.
The truth about her husband dying.
It
the
wasn't
assassination
James Earl Ray
at all. He took the fall for it.
That's what they call
him. Guy.
And it's so much around this death. How they killed a taxi driver who spotted some of
the
this
cover-ups, the conspiracy. It's
and no media covered it.
Of course.
Well, they're not going to touch it.
Right. That this should have been the court case of the century as opposed to O.J. Simpson. It should have been Martin Luther King.
Absolutely.
We have statues, we have streets, we have books, we have programs, from the government that they provide about this man to teach us about nonviolence and his civil rights struggle for social integration. But
check that out. And how violently he was murdered.
Right.
By our own government.
Right. So, that's why we need to learn the truth. About our history.
The truth really exists out in the atmosphere. It's there.
Right.
The truth is there.
The truth will always be there. Right. And there are forces out there that are designed or here to distort our historic truth.
Right.
We have a rich history, a rich truth that very few people know about and very few people will ever know.
Right.
Unless you do your own research. I went to when I was in elementary school, I went to George Washington Carver Elementary, which was in a predominantly quote Caucasian section of Long Beach.
Right.
You know, and all we were taught about George Washington Carver is that he had these peanuts and he knew how to, you know, he knew how to make peanut butter and this and that. But what we didn't know about George Washington Carver is that he used to communicate with he used to literally talk to his plants.
Yeah.
And do like these mind tricks, and he would literally tell his plants how to because he would make a lot of plants for industry.
Right.
With Henry Ford and a lot of other magnates of that era. And George Washington Carver was very soft-spoken, but he was a master at communicating with nature.
Yes,
and that's why they used him the way that he did.
And you're right when you say used
they used him.
Because they did use him.
He was brilliant. He was brilliant. He created the soybean, which was used for multitudes of industrial usings of that era. You know, but those are some of the things that were never taught in school about people of our ancestry.
And they won't be taught in the schools ever unless we as a people insist that changes are made. As we become educated, it's up to us now to pursue these riches of our own people. And the only way that's going to happen is we have to continue to empower our people and learn our own history, because we're not going to get it taught in the educational system. In fact, the educational system here in America is really a miseducation, because we're not taught to be educated except to be incarcerated, pretty much. That's why the prisons are full of black people right now. It's not because we are such violent criminals. It's because the system is by design from elementary on up to incarcerate us. And it's sad, but...
and it's so amazing you say that. I'm going to just say really quickly, the next episode that I'm working on is... you know, I've been working on the Emancipation Proclamation, you know, the typical stuff that we learn in school, and how much that the Civil War was not about us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
morally.
no, it wasn't.
No.
Yeah.
But then I got into, I'm doing a video now on the 13th Amendment, and really just digging into the 13th Amendment and how it really didn't end slavery. It just shifted over to a new system of imprisonment to create slavery. And when I began to, in my video, I go through a section where I was like, okay, it's good to know the history of this, but we need to know the tactics on how they did this.
Right.
And as I began to just dig into the black codes after slavery, some states during the Civil War began to come up with the black codes and these new vagrancy laws and stuff like that. And the more I read this, you know, I have my own personal epiphanies. Well, I work with a small team, you know, we do the research and we're just... And I have these epiphanies. And when you say the prison system, I had an epiphany when I was just looking at these black codes. Black life, period, was made criminal.
Yes.
In order to fill the prison systems for convict leasing, and even in today.
Yes.
When I read some of these codes, I mean, any group of people, black people who are quote unquote coming from under chattel slavery, our main goal is how can we enhance and build our civilization? How can we get back to self-determination and self-sustainability?
That's it.
When I read the black codes, the laws in the black codes made that criminal. You couldn't work for yourself.
Right.
It was criminal.
Right.
If you worked for a white person but you didn't have enough skills, they deemed it was criminal. Everything, I mean, they absolutely made strategic laws to criminalize us if we wanted to become self-determined and self-sustaining from under their oppression.
Absolutely.
Through laws, and they criminalize it. So I just wanted to say that with the prisons, what we see today, that's another example of just studying our history to understand today.
It's perpetual slavery, and that's what this system is designed to do to us, is that Willie Lynch syndrome to continue. And like you said, the Civil War was not about us. One good thing I can say about myself, is I went to a segregated school. I learned a lot more than when I came to California. I'm serious. I was 18, went to college out here in California, graduated from California State University with a degree in social work, because I was always inquisitive about things. But what the Civil War was fought for, I learned this stuff in junior high and high school, in a segregated school. When I came here, I was amazed at how behind the California educational system was as compared to what I had learned in school, being in a segregated school. Because our teachers did their homework. They did research. They wanted us to be knowledgeable. They taught us as much as they could about our history, about the American history, the atrocities, like what happened in Oklahoma in 1921. It brings back what you were talking about, 20 or 21, when all of these black people were empowered, had a rich community that was bombed by our government. And here they come with 9/11 saying that's the only time America has been bombed from planes on our soil, which is a lie. And we have to bring this truth forward. And I'm so happy that you're doing this with your the Great Griot, or if you say it in Africa, the term is
Great Griot.
French, because they colonized Africa, as Griot, or English Griot.
Right, and the meaning of that word, you described it in your
West
video
African
trailer.
term, keep up with the history, genealogy, culture, and that's what we want to touch on, all of that with the Great Grio.
Right.
Yeah.
And you do it. You're doing it so well, and I just want to have people to listen into her show, and we'll give more about it on the end, because she has provided, Miss Kara is on top of things. She's giving us our history, our rich history, and not the poverty-stricken woe is us like we are depicted, and that's not true. So with that said, you had something you want to say, Kim, before we go to a commercial break?
Yeah, I mean, here in America, it's amazing how we're told about our history here in America. But when you travel abroad to other countries, especially in Europe, where you had the Spanish Moors and who pretty much taught all the knowledge to Europeans, that there were kings and queens in these areas that were of darker complexion, and the Europeans there, they openly acknowledge of our history.
Right.
They don't hide it.
No, they don't. And
they
still do.
They openly acknowledge our history and tell truths. In Asia, Buddha doesn't look like the big fat roly-poly symbol that has been fed to not only us, but Asian people and people of ancient Indian descent, where Buddha originated, or where Buddha originally comes from. For example, even in Asian or martial arts, they tell us that martial arts started in Africa. It's an ancient art that was taught to Asians. Even Bruce Lee and his teachers, they would expose the truths that what they were taught is something that originated from ancient African people who was out in the jungles. They were picking up things from the animals, from nature. And they are open and quick to tell that, yes, that came from Africa. Yes, that came from black people. But here
in America,
here it's a total, it's a polar opposite.
The land of chaos.
Because we're told that everything that we create, it's mysteriously taken from us and rearranged and molded and shaped to where now they invented it.
Right, absolutely.
And that is so far from the truth. That's why it's so important for us to indoctrinate our children, to start from birth with our children, like with our granddaughter. She's going to know the history of black people, our people, because we're going to instill it in her, so she will have an understanding of what our ancestors were, and how our ancestors really built this country on our backs, and how all of the atrocities that are still going on today here in America. That's why we have so much chaos, and that's why I started this program, because we need to stop sticking our head into the sand and educate one another. And that's how you live in harmony and how you live with love, how you live with peace. Once you have an understanding of each other and you know the historical facts, rather than what we are taught in school, nothing but George Washington Carver did something with some peanuts and Martin Luther King marched on Washington, like we said earlier.
And Malcolm X was this evil guy that hated white people.
And that is so far from the truth.
So far from the truth.
Yes.
Even the fact that, you were saying we need to get our head out of the sand. Even taking it sometimes a step further, understanding what our ancestors fought for. And a lot of our ancestors, especially, during slavery, after slavery, they were actually fighting for what they were used to back in Africa, which was actually our own sovereignty.
Right.
Like, America continues to push this social integration on us, and even at a confused point with African Americans, we thought, that's the answer, social integration. But what we didn't realize, when you don't have your own sovereignty in land, like, what they're giving to Jewish people now, like trying to give them land,
or the Native Americans.
When you don't have your own sovereignty in your own land, and we are still up under the control of European sovereignty, then we lose a lot. You don't have the power, you don't have the economics. There's a lot that you don't have. And our ancestors, many of the rebellions, many of the maroon communities that people will go and start, it was all for the sake of saying we are used to having our own sovereignty, which means you have a leader or a government over you who is of the people, which means you can ensure that the decisions that they're going to make are going to be in the best interest of the people. We can't say that right now the police brutality or the enforcers of the law are doing things in the best interest of black people, or that the prison system is in the best interest of black people. Because if you look at the history of America, whites went through a lot of criminalization themselves, but how they handled their society was different how they handled, black people. How education is done is different for black people. So we can't say that this government system, if we be honest, is doing things because they're not of the people and is not in the best interest of the people. So, when you study history and you begin to see why they fought, our ancestors were actually, a lot of them, fighting to have our own sovereignty.
That's right. And
it's the one freedom we never talk about. Sovereignty.
It's the one thing that was taken away when we gained citizenship with the 14th Amendment.
That it was taken away, our sovereignty. And who would not want to have their own sovereignty?
It's like we were foster children up under parents who treated us horribly compared to the real children. And what child in their right mind would say, hey, I want to fight for you to be my real parent. I want to fight for you to be my guardian forever when you're treated like this. No, our ancestors knew, like, that's not what we want. We want to have our own sovereignty, and we can get to a place of equality and justice as in neighbors. We can go back to trading, we can go back to interacting, but we have our own power, our own military protection. We have all of this to protect us. Now we're back on equal playing fields. And now let's open back up for, we're not up under oppression. Now we can trade. Now we can integrate however we want to integrate. People can go live in Asia, right now because they have their own sovereignty. Hey, let's trade with them. Let's do all of this stuff with them. They can protect themselves. You can protect yourself. But that's what we don't have.
And we've never had it, unfortunately, this country. And I say this quite frequently in some of my social media commentaries. When this country was founded, it was founded on false pretense. We've never had a democracy in this country in the true sense of what a democracy is. When you take one human being and treat that human being as if they are only a partial man, and that is not gender specific, and you put them under your rulership and treat them like they are, I would say, worse than the worst slime upon the earth. What can you expect when this is continued, even though you hit the nail on the head when you said about we were freed? How can you free someone when you don't give them the tools to go out and make their way? And even when, as brilliant as we are, we made our way, they destroyed it.
Or really restrict them. And in my last video,
and restrict them.
If people go and watch the Abe Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation, there's a portion in there where after they freed us, they were talking about shipping us back off to Liberia. And a lot of black people thought, oh, that's what they should have did, and that should have been great. But then when I researched it more, I was like, well, look who they were going to put over the head of this Liberia that they were shipping black people to.
Right.
It was somebody with a very Eurocentric mind.
Right.
Which means that they were known and pretty much a general over there because they were helping to stop the rebellion. First of all, they were very Christianized, and nothing against Christianity. I mean, whatever people believe is what you believe, but he was very much so indoctrinated with that. So he thought that I'm going back over there with these uncivilized people. And he also, he had, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, they sent him back over there with that, and he helped to put out the rebellions of people who were fighting these European invaders coming in. He helped to stop those wars against the people fighting these European invaders coming in. So that's who they were going to place over Liberia. It was still a level of oppression there.
Absolutely. And that is why the chaos continued. And we're going to go to break in a minute, but I just want to, you touched on what I was going to talk about with you next, religion versus spirituality, and how we had our first guest to kick this month off was Jeremiah Kamara, who wrote the book Holy Lockdown, and does religion hinder progress in the black community. So when we come back from the break, we want to touch on that and get your take on what your thoughts are.
Yes, it's Aimed at Purpose, the radio show. Kara L. Poole is our guest. Don't you go nowhere. Hello, world! It's a new year, which means new and live editions of Aimed at Purpose, the radio show. We'll be sharing new ideas with new guests from around the world, revealing new truths with every new topic presented to you, the A2P universe. So tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here at Global Voice Broadcasting at gvbstudios.com/show/A2P. You can also check out all of our archive shows on YouTube by typing in Aim to Purpose Radio. A special thank you to all the loyal viewers that have been with us from the beginning, and a big welcome and thank you to all the new viewers plugging into the A2P universe. Your power lies within you, so let it loose. Once again, this is Ken and Wesley Mason, co-host of Aimed at Purpose, the radio show.
Hello, world. Once again, we're back. I'm Louise Hicks, your host, along with my son and co-host, Ken and Wesley Mason. And we have a great guest here celebrating our third week of Black History Month, Miss Kara L. Poole. And we're talking about the importance of learning Black history from the Black perspective. And if you saw that clip, Miss Kara said, we're going to learn some history up in here today.
That's right.
And that we are.
And we are learning some history up in here today.
That's right.
So what we're going to talk about now, as I mentioned before we took the break, we had our guest on the first of the month to kick it off, Mr. Jeremiah Kamara, and we talked about his book, Holy Lockdown. And I'm one that I talk about this a lot, spirituality versus religion. Or
religionality.
Or religionality, as I
you
call
coin it now.
That's true. I call it religionality.
Religionality.
I call it religionality versus spirituality. And I always say that religion and politics are our two most divisive establishments on the planet. And that's really sad to say, but it's realistic. And we are about real talk, real people, real purpose here. And religion, in my opinion, organized religion, from my perspective, has been an issue within the Black community for years and decades and hundreds of years, centuries. And I believe a lot of it stemmed from the fact, and you can address this, Ms. Kara, that our spirituality was stripped of us and we were given white Jesus. I always say this too. My mother never hung white Jesus on our wall because my mother always said, from her learning in the Bible, Jesus never looked like that. And she said, I'm not going to hang that white man on my wall.
Right,
And she never did. So we grew up with a different perspective of Jesus than many black people. So give us your take on what your thoughts are about this.
Okay, first of all, let me say that I grew up Christian. My father's a pastor.
Okay.
But I too have gone through a period where okay, first of all, you can't study history and not see how religion was used to help to keep us subservient and oppressed. To the point, it's been a couple of books that I've read, and it's great to go back and read narratives sometimes to understand the people and their perspective at the time. And I've read some narratives where I go back and I read the sermons given from some of these pastors back in the day during slavery. And I promise you that I could go into some churches today and see the exact same thing.
Come on.
I know.
And when I read some of these narratives, it breaks down the sermon as in what this pastor was taught to teach.
Right.
Yes.
And we perpetuate our own problem because we carry it on after a certain point.
Absolutely.
So I'm a person that right now, what people choose to believe in it.
Right.
Because it is a very dividing topic.
Yes, it is.
But I'm like, in learning your history, learn how it was used to oppress you. Because how it was used to oppress you, if the oppression is continuing today or the same rhetoric is going forward, then you're still having a very oppressed mindset. Let's wait for the by and by, and we gonna get it on the other side. Yeah, let's get it on the other side. But our ancestors didn't fight for no reason, right? I mean, and to be honest and fair, there actually was in some of the empires some organization to spirituality in Africa, and we come from spiritual beings.
Yes, we do.
So I don't discredit, because not to knock on anybody, but there are some atheists out there who like, I'm just done with it all, because you run into the frustration of like, gosh, have they tampered with everything
Right.
to use it to oppress us? But I say we come from a spiritual people, and it can be divisive, but I begin to look at black people like this. I even have a video on this, on black unity. Black people need to stick together and stuff like that. But you know what I'm beginning to realize? I was talking to a very close friend who helps me on my show, and we were talking, and he said something very powerful. We had just finished watching the documentary with the white guy saying, if black people just get it together and they get their unity, we're going to have a problem. He said white people are not going to ever let our children be up under black people. He said it's not going to happen. He said no matter what arguments we have with each other or whatever divisive thing we have, we're going to stick together if we find out that our children are going to be up under yours. We're going to try to stay supreme. He said, but if black people ever just get together and have unity, it'll bring an end to all this was going on.
It's true.
But my friend, he thought about that for a second. He said, what's crazy with that unity thing? He said, think about it for a minute. Black people have been trying forever to have this unity. He said, but if you go back and listen to what he said, he didn't say that white people just had unity.
Right.
White people have an agenda. That agenda is what brings their unity together. That agenda is what brings them up under a code to say, we can't let this happen.
A strategy, an end game.
Right. He said, black people, we want unity, but we don't have an agenda. And I don't know why that thing hit me like a ton of bricks, because I said, whether you a Muslim, Christian, African spirituality, Yoruba, any of that, right? If black people had an agenda, and just say that part of that agenda was to say, wait a minute, whatever church, mosque, spirituality organization you in, you will give 10% to go towards building African-centered schools over here. I don't care what you worship. A portion of your money needs to go towards going into our credit unions to build African-centered schools so that our children and our next generations can come out of the sickening of the school system.
So that
we can teach them, because education should be to build our civilization.
Absolutely.
And,
building.
And if we had an agenda, a lot of our problems of not being able to unify would come to a standstill, because no matter what you're into, if you're going to follow the code that we set forth, then you're going to follow the code. So I think, religion can divide. It has divided us.
It has.
And it has
really
been used to oppress us.
Right.
But more than that, I'm like, if we could get an agenda, if we had our elite,
Right.
whoever, could build this, who's over education, who's over our media, entertainment, all the 9 areas, who's over a lot of different things, religion, who could set an agenda for black people, so that we as individuals down here could all follow the code, which would mean if they set one for education, then the great Grio, if I'm saying that I want to educate, I need to fall up under line of this agenda, because we are on one accord to follow this
That's the key
purpose.
to unity.
Right.
It's an agenda.
We are out here following all of these leaders. We got a leader. Other ethnicities don't. Do you hear about? Oh well, so and so is the leader over there and leader over there, and here we are. Oh, we got Martin Luther King. Then once he was taken out because he had an agenda.
Right.
That's why he was taken out.
Right.
Martin Luther King had come to the conclusion that sitting next to someone in school is not the answer when that person is no smarter than you are.
Right.
That's not the answer.
Right.
And I can attest to that because I've gone to both schools, integrated and segregated.
Right.
And that's not the answer. And he had come to the conclusion with an agenda and a strategy, and that's why he was taken out.
Marcus Garvey, same thing.
Marcus Garvey, same
Yeah.
thing. He had an agenda. And that's what brings about unity. And once you get on an economic footing and a social footing, a lot of this stuff will go away. The hate.
Yeah.
All of this.
But once we all follow a code that says we're going to buy black. Why? Because that's the code for black people right now. That's the thing that's going to help our civilization, is to put our money back into black businesses.
Into our community.
We don't have a choice
and
but
build,
to follow it. Right.
Because we don't have a community. We have a neighborhood.
Neighborhoods.
We don't have banks. If you drive in the black neighborhood, you can tell when you get there. The roads are ruined. The schools are dilapidated. You don't have a grocery store, a grocery market. You might have a store, but it's not a market, a supermarket that you can go in and get healthy food. You don't have banks that are owned by black people. I went to this event a couple of weeks ago, I guess now, a week or so ago. One United Bank, and we had writers and people in there talking about this. We have to build for ourselves. Nobody's going to build for us. We have to build for ourselves. So that white gentleman you said that, was it a white gentleman?
Right, it was. Well, my friend was about the agenda. Now, he was black.
Right, but the
in the documentary, yes, it was a white guy.
Right.
Who said just have unity, and like I said, we need
and it's
an
not
agenda.
just about unity.
No.
And he was right about that. Unity is necessary, but it comes once you have an agenda.
You would willingly put some things to the side.
Absolutely.
You could not like your brother and sister over there and the ideology that they fall up under, but you could say that you got a black business and you selling what I need. I might not like you, but if we all up under this code and this agenda, I got to support you.
Right.
And that's what brings that stuff together.
And that's what brings that unity about. And when you talk about us having that undiluted history, and I like what you said about when you keep hearing this same sermon over and over and over. I mean,
when
how
I
is that
read
going to help you?
Sometimes when I'm researching and reading, I just have to close the book like, oh my God. I mean, if my father watching this, listen. So I've been in some churches. I'm from North Carolina. It's the Bible Belt of the world.
Oh, I'm from Louisiana.
Okay,
so you know I know. And I've been there. I lived in both worlds, and that's why I have gotten away from that religion, that slavery time religion, because that's all it was. It did not empower us as a people. We have to be empowered to learn that we have to have economic growth in order to be on a level playing field, which has eluded us by design. And now that we are coming into a consciousness of that, we are headed in the right direction. We just have to bring out more people and stop the apathy within our community. And we can't really put it on us because of the apathy, because we've been ingrained and indoctrinated with this for so long.
It's in our DNA for
it's
generations.
In our DNA.
Yes. And I'll tell you why I was frustrated with the religion thing. When the gentleman went into the church in South Carolina and shot up and killed the people in the black church in South Carolina, man, I said, if this is not a replica of what I've been reading, any civilization, when you are being attacked, what you're supposed to do is protect your civilization. Okay? we see the greatest example of that in America. When this happened in America, in South Carolina with these people, they were absolutely okay with saying, no, we're not going to fight back. We're going to go outside, we're going to hold hands, and we're going to sing, you know. When
Sing
I don't even know what
away.
songs they sung, but, we're going to hold hands and we're going to get rid of this thing and we're going to pray. And I was like, wow, the cognitive dissonance, what we don't even see some things because we become so socialized as our norm.
View.
I said when 9/11 happened, regardless of the true reasons of 9/11 or what really happened, but when it happened, how did America choose to protect its civilization? They did not say, you know what, let's get those men who were involved with this, let's bring them here, let's hold their hands and let's say a prayer.
No, they didn't.
And let's sing, when the time comes by, we're going to be on one accord in heaven. They show us the example every day of how they protect their civilization.
That's it.
But we are taught and trained and indoctrinated to stay oppressed and to just keep internalizing it, internalize it, deal with it. And then they say, why you not smiling today? Because we internalize it.
Yeah.
And we got to let it loose.
That's
like I say at the top of my show, always my tagline, your power lies within you.
That's
you
right.
must let it loose.
That's right.
We can't run around here, and it starts with an individual.
Right.
You must be the change you want to see.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you go out and become violent. And we have to stop killing one another, too, because we've been the most ostracized ethnic group on the planet Earth. So why are we killing each other? Why are we hating on each other? Because that's how we've been indoctrinated by the European society to not trust one another. It started back in slavery with the Willie Lynch letter, but we're getting out of it. And I know some churches are teaching and helping people to understand this, because some people had never heard of Willie Lynch letter. I was taught that in high school, and because I went to, again, a segregated school, and I had very good teachers who did research, did their homework, and they taught us our history as much as they knew how to teach us. And it's just not being taught today. So with that being said, we're going to go to another break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk. We want to get your take on Black Lives Matter and
this is getting good.
a little bit about the Oscars and just want to talk a little bit about that. So let's take another break, and then we'll be right back.
This edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, is brought to you by L. Hicks Consulting Services. When you want the best in business coaching, life coaching, or perhaps your organization, business, or company is in need of a dynamic speaker for an upcoming workshop or seminar, contact Louise Hicks for L. Hicks Consulting Services at 1-562-310-1495. From anywhere around the world, that's 1-562-310-1495. For more information about Louise Hicks and her consulting services, visit her website at www.louisehicks.biz. Again, that's www.louisehicks.biz. Or call 1-562-310-1495. L. Hicks Consulting Services, where professionalism is top priority.
Once again, we're back, and we're talking today with our special guest, Miss Kara L. Poole, and we're talking about the importance of learning the Black history from the Black perspective. And she has really shared some really great information with us, giving her perspective. And we know there's a great movement now because of all the police brutality. That's nothing new. This has been going on for years because they want to keep the prisons full. And I mean, this is true. You go and do your own research. I read an article not too long ago about Angola prison, and I'm from Louisiana, and they openly said it, that the prisons weren't full enough. They got to go out and recruit and get some more people in prison. And those people happen to be Black people they're looking for to get in prison and become incarcerated. And I mean, prison is a big business. It's very profitable. Yeah. It's being traded on the stock market. So it's big business, and it's big business for us. That's why Raheem Shabazz did the award-winning film Elementary Genocide, which chronicles how the educational system is by design from elementary school up to indoctrinate our children so they will go from the school to the prison system. Right. That's how this system is designed, people. So we gotta do something about it. And with this Black Lives Movement, we know that a lot of people are saying, and we got about 5 or 6 more minutes so we can get this in. They're saying that why you have a Black Lives Matter movement? And our lives do matter. We have to do something. Nobody's going to look after us. So what is your take on the Black Lives Matter movement?
As far as the actual organization, I have a totally different feel just looking at their website and the total agenda of what they stand for. I don't know who funds the organization, but
it's questionable.
Yeah, a lot of Black organizations, I will say, even in history in the past, have a lot of times been infiltrated with other agendas, detoured, so that it doesn't ultimately hit the agenda of Black man, Black woman, and that's who the fight is about, because that's who's been attacked. That's
the family unit, the structure,
right?
Absolutely,
or just the Black Lives Matter is pushing for a lot of other agendas, and I'm just one that just looking at history. Even when the feminism thing jumped in a long time ago, hey, Black people, let's stay on course, because we have been attacked by the same person. Anyway, so but getting into Black lives actually mattering, that is something that we should push for, and embrace. For people and really to wake up our own Black people to say, wake up out of the denial that you're in. We are still having war waged upon us. You can't say that we don't when you look at the collective of our race and see the disenfranchisement in every area. Every area. If we brought in the statistics of where we are today compared to 1865, we haven't moved, you guys.
We haven't.
We've gone through this pinwheel of feeling like we've moved, and we've moved into what we thought was post-racial until recently. And I thank God for social media so that we could begin to see the realities of what's going on, as opposed to more of us going to sleep. Right. So yes, Black lives do matter, and you do have a lot of backlash from that, because people saying all lives matter.
Right.
My point is all lives do matter, but but other people have a problem realizing that Black lives and all lives matter. So we're trying to express that. But even in expressing that with the movement, I think that I think the movement should really be. I think it should be a push right now to wake up a lot of Black people.
Absolutely.
And to get their thinking onto a path, even where we stop blaming each other for where we've been victims. Like the Black on Black crime. Yes, it's a symptom of our community, but I think we need to stay focused on where did the problem stem from.
The root of it.
Right.
Yeah.
We're
Absolutely.
in prison at a high rate, but we need to look at the problem and see where did the problem stem from. And a lot of Black people have a problem doing that, because they say, well, stop acting like the victim. No, we are the victim.
Yeah.
But it is a reality. We do need to deal with the symptoms of it, but we never need to stop looking at where the problem started.
Yeah. And that's the only way you can fix a problem.
I talk
about that all the time on this show. Any problem that you have to start from the root cause of it.
Absolutely.
And we have to address that. Embrace Black Lives Matter, but address the root cause of these problems, which stem from where?
Right. Even with our drug use and anything else you can name, where did our poverty come from?
Yeah.
It was systematic. And one of my videos, I'm going to share it, because I was actually used when I got out of school to go work at a bank that's been around for 150 years to help disenfranchise my people. When I began to see it, I was like, wow, I spent money to go to school, to get out to work for this corporation that's actually doing harm to my people, that helped with our poverty problem. And here, banks got bailouts, and we got placed as you a problem because you're doing too much.
I talk about that all the time, about the big banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase Bank, and we're here putting our money. I'm guilty of it too, but I'm getting ready to pull mine out. I don't have a lot, but what I do have.
Black-owned bank in LA.
I just found out it's a black-owned bank in LA, and it's called One United Bank.
Yes.
And these banks are disenfranchising us. They want our money. They want, and guess what? Who are they run by?
Right.
This government is run by the corporate bankers.
That's right.
The Federal Reserve System is not a government entity, people. It's a private-owned entity that's ruining our lives as Black people to keep us in poverty. And until we understand and educate ourselves on this, we're going to linger behind, and you called it just the way it is. I'm so happy you're out here putting out these, because in one of the videos you talked about that. What's the name of that video?
The America's Wealth.
America's Wealth.
Slaves, yeah.
And Dr. Claude Anderson talks about it so beautifully in his book. Get his book, Dr. Claude Anderson, Black Labor, White Wealth. And also Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil. Napoleon Hill wrote this book, and he's a white person. He wrote this book he's a white author, I should say, back in 1938. It was not released until 2011 because he feared for his life if Outwitting the Devil was released. Wow. So we have to read to people. Reading opens the mind to great opportunities and possibilities. So start reading. Read Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth. Read Napoleon Hill's book, Outwitting the Devil, because this is real.
Yes.
And once we embrace our lives ourselves and understand our history, we can get on economic footing, because your power really does lie within you. No matter what anybody tells you, and they tell you this stuff, you have no power to keep you oppressed. Right. And with that being said, we're pretty much out of time.
We gotta wrap it up.
So we want to wrap it up. We want you to have a final thought, Kara and Ken, if you have something to say.
No. Go ahead and
final thought, and give us your
give us any website, or how can the people get to you?
Okay. Final thought, really quick, is what she said. As a people, we have to make sure that we stay continuously educate ourselves, however we can. Reading books, going on YouTube, use that right now, as opposed to looking at some of the senseless stuff that we might want to look at.
Nonsense.
It's so much educational stuff on there. So many documentaries people are uploading. Go check that stuff out, because you can learn from it. I promise you, it opens your eyes to a new realm of what your ancestors fought for, how they sacrificed for you. So much. And if you want to check out The Great Griot, go to YouTube, and you can actually just type in The Great Griot, and that's spelled Griot, or you can go directly to the website, and that's thegreatgriot.com, thegreatgriot.com, and all the videos are shown on there.
Perfect.
And Miss Kara gonna teach you some history here.
We're gonna teach some history today.
And we have taught some history here today. And with that being said, we thank Miss Kara for coming in. We're gonna have her back because she's a walking library. She knows our history. We need more people like that to shed light on the greatness of our people and what we have contributed to history. And with that being said, until next week, your power lies within you. Let it loose.